course, I do realize, it is in our papers, that lynchings do happen. And again, it goes back to our situation of slavery. But since you brought that issue up, madam, let me, if I may, I'll tell you a story. This story goes back some 5 years. I was in the city of Williamsburg, as I am 4 or 5 times on business. And I heard these horrific screams. And upon investigation, I saw that they were having one of their slave auctions, as they do, twice a month, in front of the Raleigh Tavern. And what was worse, madam, it was a negress, scantily clad, chained and buckled through her neck, arms this way, and her feet were manacled. I will tell you that that sight was sickening enough. But this was something else. Because you see, there was a young lad. He could not have been more than around 5 years old. Equally buckled and manacled. And trying to get to what was obviously his mother. Not understanding what was going on. And I will tell you, as I said before, madam, that the scene was horrific. But before I finish the story, let me take a tally, shall I? All of you here that own slaves, please raise your hand. Oh, this is amazing. This is amazing. Let me ask you another question. Those of you here that sit in judgment of me, that would never, ever, ever own a slave, raise your hand. Raise your hand now. Some of you did not raise your hand either way. I find that interesting as well. But for those of you that rose your hand and said that you would never own a slave, let me continue that story. Because it was obvious that that young lad was the son of that woman. And it was also obvious that they were getting ready to sell them separately. Well, I will tell you that that situation touched me. And that I would have spent anything and everything to make sure that that did not happen. So I purchased those 2 poor wretched souls. And as you can see, some 5 years later, the woman has become quite a seamstress, has she not? Yes. And I lease her out to people that need clothes done. I get a commission, and she makes a tip. And that young lad is now apprenticing in my shop to become a shoemaker. And I also, when he finishes his apprenticeship, will lease him out. And again, I will make a commission, and he will make tips. So, let me pose a question to all of you. If you had a choice of either purchasing these 2 poor wretched souls to make sure that they would not be sold separately. Oh, let me just take another tally, if I may. How many of you are Christian? Raise your hand. Ah, yes, the majority. Doesn't it not say in the Bible? Good man. Doesn't it say in the Bible, judge not, so ye shall not be judged? Yes. And that is a credo that I live by. I do not know of these other individuals that own slaves. Of course, many of them do. Mr. Jefferson, Mr. Henry, Mr. Randolph, Mr. Blair, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And they just don't own a few slaves. No, they own hundreds and hundreds of slaves. But I am not there to witness their benevolence or their cruelty. And because of that, I will not judge them, because I am not there to see it myself. Lord Dunmore has had a proclamation saying that all slaves that are slaves to rebel masters are now free. But only the slaves that are the slaves to the rebel masters, not the loyalists, and certainly not him. And I can also tell you that 9 of my slaves, all 9 of them, none has left. As a matter of fact, there is an old a Negro, that is my slave, and I call him Thomas, after Mr. Jefferson. And every time I see Mr. Jefferson, I remind him of that. And he is an old man. And if you would listen to our conversations back and forth, you would think he was the master and I was the slave. But he is like an old uncle that one gets used to after a period of time. So as I said before, I do not sit in judgment of my fellow man, and I hope that none of you sit in judgment of me, because it will be between me and my Maker how he sees my situation with slavery.